Hey, everybody, and welcome back for another off-season discussion video. Today, we're going to be talking about the Pittsburgh Penguins, and joining us is a very, very special guest. It is Joey Wagner, huge Penguins fan, Penguins YouTuber, and a really fun person to talk to about anything Pittsburgh. Joey, thank you so much for coming on, and excited to have you. Are you ready to talk about what the Pens have done this offseason?
No, absolutely, John. This has sort of been a little bit of a strange off season for the Penguins because the first time in forever that there could have been a lot of change, and it went right down to the wire where there could have been change and Malkin was not happy, but everything right back to normal in Penguins land. Chris Letang back of getting Malkin back. And I'm going to try to get it done one more time with the core.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's kind of the big thing with this offseason was that, there could have been major changes for the Pittsburgh Penguins, but they end up bringing back Letang. They bring back Malkin. Obviously, Crosby's still under contract. So the big three stay intact, even though that really right up until Malkin signed, there was a lot of questions about whether the big three would stay. And then at the end of the day, it's kind of, Pittsburgh's Pittsburgh. You still got Malkin, Crosby, Letang, and not a whole lot ultimately changed. They also brought back Rickard Rakell, who they picked up at the deadline last year, and they gave him a contract extension. So it seems like Pittsburgh's trying to run it back with a fairly similar group to what they had and shoot for that playoff run with this group one more time.
Yeah, definitely. And I could see why they would want to go that way and think that way, because a lot of people might forget this, but the Penguins were up 3-1 on the Rangers in that first round series, and they were leading game 5 2-0 in that game with a third string goalie.
Yeah.
So let's not try to act like the Penguins were this horrible hockey team. They weren't. They were beating the Rangers handily with a third string goalie, and then the Trouba elbow on Crosby in game 5 sort of changed the momentum. Rangers came back in that game, and then they won game 6 when Crosby was out, and game 7 is game 7. Anything can happen, and the Rangers got the bounce in overtime. So the Penguins are a very good team. So fans locally and all over the country, if you guys think that, the Penguins are a terrible team, that's just not true.
No, they were not far off. And again, we see it, I think, in the NHL, probably even more so than other sports, where a first round series can come down to 1 or 2 plays. And then that's the difference between being a first round exit and going to a conference final or even going to the finals. Like, there's such a slim margin of error in the NHL playoffs that even these teams that get out early on in the playoffs really may have been only a goal or 2 away from making a really deep playoff run. And I think that Pittsburgh in their management and they think that they're really not that far off from making that run. Obviously, the goaltending situation, the injury situation in general in the playoffs this past year certainly played a role in Pittsburgh losing that opening series to the Rangers. And you got to wonder, if Crosby, doesn't go out, if maybe they have Tristan Jarry for that series and, he's not injured, maybe something, that could have really changed that series. And maybe Pittsburgh's the team in the Eastern Conference Final instead of New York.
Yeah, definitely. It was especially the Penguins in that series. They found a way to get to Igor Shesterkin. And everyone was like, oh, and he was great. He was the Vezina winner, but the Penguins found a way to get in his head, especially the games that were in Pittsburgh, games 3 and 4, 7 goals in each of those games. And another thing that I thought was interesting for the Penguins is in their first round series, they had leads in game 5, 6, and 7, and during the season, they had the most cap space that went towards defensemen. And they sort of did a little bit of shuffling with that. John Marino traded to the Devils. Mike Matheson going to Montreal, getting Jeff Petrie back, signing Jan Ruda in free agency. I really like what they did with the defensemen, especially Petrie.
Mm-hmm.
He's a first pairing guy who's going to be on the second pairing here in Pittsburgh. And you basically have, I would say, 2 number 1 D-men in Letang and in Petrie. And I think that's really going to help out the Penguins defensively.
Yep.
But with all of that cap space going towards him and everybody, what is sort of slightly concerning is the depth in the bottom 6. But if it meant getting the defense shored up that couldn't hold leads in these playoff games, and I completely understand why they went how they did. Well, I would just like a little bit more proven depth on the bottom 6.
Yeah, that's where Pittsburgh did make their changes this offseason, was the back end. As much as, they kept the main core together and the re-signings that they made with Malkin and Letang and Raquel and everything, even Kasperi Kapanen's coming back now. They did make the 2 major moves on the back end, sending, Marino and Matheson out and bringing in Ty Smith and bringing in Jeff Petrie. And Pittsburgh's a team that I feel like for the last number of years, if there was ever an area of the Penguins roster that people kind of questioned or talked about, it was the D. And it was always, I would say post cup teams in 16 and 17. From then on, I would say the questions about the Penguins was, is that D core good enough? And we've seen them, make some changes on the back end over the years. They've tried some different players. There's been a number of guys that have gone through and only been there for a short time, and they've moved on quickly. Jamie Oleksiak was there for a very short time. Eric Goodbranson was there for a very short time. And they never seemed to really find what they were looking for. I think this past year, Mike Matheson had a better year than I thought he was going to have last season. And I think that really upped his trade value for them to be able to pull off a move like they did with Montreal and get Petrie coming in. And then obviously Marino under contract on a very team-friendly deal. He was very movable, especially to a young team like New Jersey. It's, to me, I think one of the most interesting things to watch for with this team is going to be how does this new decor look compared to how they did last year, and how much of an improvement are they going to be?
Yeah, that's definitely a big question, because right now the Penguins, they have 9 NHL defensemen under contract, not 7, not 8. They have 9 under contract, and I just don't see all of them coming into the season. I wouldn't be surprised if one of them, or maybe even 2 of them, got traded for forward depth, maybe like Marcus Pettersson or maybe Brian Dumoulin, someone who has a little bit of cap hit on their contract to bring offensive help back on that third line. But it'll be very interesting to see, because you have Letang on your top pair, Petrie on your second pair. You have P.O. Joseph. They signed him to a one-way deal, so he's going to finally make the full leap to the NHL. You have Ruhwedel and you have Freeman on your bottom pair. You have Ty Smith now. There's just a lot of different ways that this could go, and so many different possibilities to how the pieces fit. I have no idea how all of these pieces are going to fit, and the only way that I can see it working is if one of them are traded for something. Who and when and for what, I don't know. But in a salary cap league, I just don't see a team having 9 defensemen on the cap, making it work, and having a complete top to bottom roster that would have what it takes to win a Stanley Cup.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. They've got one extra defenseman right now, and I think that that's a move that's going to have to be made. I could see that being kind of like a training camp type move. Where maybe they get a few weeks into training camp or a week into training camp, start getting into the preseason, and then that kind of move gets made. Where Marcus Pettersson is the name that I've been hearing as kind of the expendable one at this point that might be shipped out. But I do feel like they need to, they're not going to carry 9 defensemen. That's just not feasible with the roster limits and with the salary cap. So, somebody's probably going to be the odd one out there. And looking at their roster, they definitely could use another forward. And, they're very deep now on the back end with what they've brought in. But looking at those third and fourth lines, I mean, I don't think you necessarily want to be depending on, a Ryan Paling who came over in the Petrie trade, the Drew O'Connor, Josh Archibald, guys like this they're pretty, borderline players. So I feel like if you could get one more piece into that bottom 6 that's a little bit more established as like a third line NHLer, that could be a big help in Pittsburgh's forward depth and rounding out that roster.
Yeah, definitely. Because when we won the back-to-back cups,
Yep.
especially 2016, what won them that Stanley Cup was the HBK line of Hagelin, Bonino, Kessel. You can't just have 2 scoring lines and 2 lines that do nothing.
Yeah.
The teams in the NHL are just too good, and you need your third line to have a little bit of scoring punch and help out a little bit.
Yeah, completely agree with you on that. Absolutely. So one last area that we haven't talked about yet is the goaltending. Casey DeSmith, who's been, the backup for the last little while now, was brought back again. He was re-signed. Obviously, Penguins fans are hoping for a healthy Tristan Jarry. Obviously, he had the foot issue at the end of last season, and that certainly had an impact on their playoff series as well. And Dustin Tokarski, kind of some organizational depth that was brought in, going to be an AHL goalie, but certainly a guy that has played NHL games. And if you get down into your third or fourth goaltender, is a guy that can be called up. How do you feel about the Penguins, running it back with presumably Jarry and DeSmith being their tandem again?
I feel pretty good about it, actually. Casey DeSmith has, for the most part, other than the first part of last season, other than that, he's been very, very solid in his entire NHL career. And for the haters on Tristan Jarry, he's a 2-time all-star level goaltender. He is really, really good. And it seems like as he's getting older and more experienced, he's getting better. And I don't want to, harp on any other goaltenders. And again, hopefully Matt Murray does fantastic with the Maple Leafs this upcoming season. But it seemed like with Murray, he peaked early.
Yep.
And then after the 2 cups, he peaked and he wasn't the same player afterwards. I know that he was very close with his father, and his father passed away shortly after that. And thoughts and prayers even now to his family for that, because that is an incredibly tough thing to have to go through. But it seemed like after that happened, he wasn't the same goalie on the ice. He peaked early. I think Jarry is still going up the ladder and can get better. So I feel good about the Penguins goaltending situation. Hopefully this year, he doesn't have his foot broken 3 weeks before the playoffs begin, because I think if he's healthy and played, I think the series with New York ends in 5 games and we're moving on instead of New York. So I feel perfectly fine about the goalies. And another thing that's pretty interesting, Tristan Jarry, only 1 year left on his contract this upcoming season. I would sign him to an extension, probably 4 or 5 years, probably around. A lot of these NHL goalies are making about 5 million on the cap.
Yeah.
I feel comfortable with 4 years, 5 million on the cap. I'm pretty sure that's what the old Maple Leaf goalie who went to Edmonton, Jack Campbell, got. And if they said, hey, that's what you have to give Jarry to keep him, I'd be like, cool, I'm fine with that.
Okay. So overall, just quickly to finish things up, just overall feelings on Pittsburgh heading into this season. Are you confident that they're going to be a good team again and playoff bound as they usually are?
Yeah, yeah, I honestly am. There's just, even though Crosby and Malkin are older, they are still
Yep.
very, very, very good players in this league. Even at now, Crosby going to be turning 35 in a couple of weeks. Even with him now and his contract at 8.7 per on the cap, with how well he plays, even now at almost 35 years old,
Yep.
that's still a bargain.
Yep.
Malkin and Letang at a little more than 6 million for what they provide when healthy. That is still a bargain. I know they had to add extra years onto those contracts to get those numbers, but it's sort of, with the Pittsburgh Penguins, John, right now, it's all about the next 3 years. Crosby is under contract for 3 more years for all that he's done for this city and for this franchise. Without Sidney Crosby, they'd probably be in Kansas City right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about going all in on these next 3 years and seeing if you can get another championship out of the Sidney Crosby era. And I think if guys stay healthy come playoff time and they play as well as we know they can, and we've seen them play, even at the advanced age that they are now, if the pieces fall, I think they have another run left in them. I really do.
All right. So the Pittsburgh Penguins bring the main core, keep it together, and once again, looking to make a deep playoff run and push for another Stanley Cup. Joey, thank you so much for taking the time to do this video with me and coming on the channel. It was awesome to talk with you and great to get your perspective on the Penguins this offseason.
Awesome. Awesome, John. Thank you so much for having me on. And I haven't looked at the schedule completely in depth, but I can't wait to specifically circle those dates when I see them, when the Penguins play the Bruins again. We'll see how that goes.
Yes, always great games between those two teams and a lot of fun. Absolutely. If you guys want to get more Joey's content covering the Penguins and Pittsburgh sports, check out his channel. It will be linked in the description of the video. Give him a sub. It's awesome to have him on the channel again, and really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you to everybody for watching, and hope you guys enjoyed this video. Another off-season discussion. We'll have more of these coming up throughout the summer. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much, and see you next time.